Well, I'll tell you something. I think that the Biden administration exacerbated the problem. I think they had diplomatic failures. I think that they looked at it from the wrong perspective with the wrong lens. I think that the minute that the Biden administration came in and they annexed or destroyed the Keystone XL pipeline, but then lifted sanctions on the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, that gave full geopolitical strength to Russia on the oil and gas systems that go into Germany and go into the EU. That further ingratiated them in there. But not to mention the fact that even America, who had oil independency under President Trump, went from doing 16,000 barrels of oil in October of 2017 from Russia to 217,000 barrels of oil a month from Russia in October of 2021. You saw where there's actually a funding of our adversarial nations. They also saw the fact that in 2014, Russia came across and they annexed Crimea and they took over Donetsk. And yet the Obama-Biden administration did nothing about it. So what Putin knows is that it's in a weak administration. They know that they will not act, they will not do anything, they will not levy the necessary sanctions. In fact, it's the UK who's made more efforts on sanctions than anyone else. The UK has now sanctioned 5 state banks. They have frozen the assets of 3 of the major oligarchs throughout Russia. And it was Germany who said that they will not certify Nord Stream 2. Where was the Biden administration in all of this? They weren't there. The same administration, by the way, that would only provide humanitarian aid when Russia invaded before, and it wasn't until President Trump got in there and started delivering those beautiful Javelin systems that we love so much.
Oh, yeah.
That was stopping the tanks, that was stopping Putin, pulled out of the INF treaty, which was a failed treaty, and basically acknowledged what in the 90s, what a lot of people don't talk about, the Budapest Memorandum. In the 1990s, the Budapest Memorandum was signed, which was a nuclear non-proliferation. That was signed by the Federation of Russia, the United States government, the UK and Northern Ireland, and Ukraine. That says that if they got rid of their nuclear weapons, that they would be recognized, they would be honored and respected as a sovereign nation with its existing borders. That was violated by the Federation of Russia in 2014, but the Obama-Biden administration did nothing to actually hold them accountable.
And the reason why is not to say that we should, perhaps put our boots on the ground in Ukraine, but it's just in the fact that in some way it will affect us in the country in whether.
Absolutely.
And Biden has.
Because I'm an anti-interventionist when it comes to putting boots on the ground. I don't think that we should spill any more blood for another foreign nation. I think that we have to take care of America first. But when we say that, we have to understand something. This is bigger than Russia.
Yeah.
This is about the Russia, China, Iran linkage. So we know that China has been under a cyber economic and resource warfare with us for decades. They've been doing it in Africa. They've been trying to expand into Eurasia. So this is Russia's ability to expand out Eurasia. Because remember, the Chinese want the One Road, One Belt initiative. That was essentially reestablishing the Silk Route, but through maritime transit. They have to take over Eurasia, Africa, and Oceania in order to achieve this goal. So they've now, because of similar sanctions, been linked to Russia, which has now ingratiated and brought themselves in stronger, and we now are seeing a great superpower resurgence. The problem is America is not part of that resurgence.
And when we look at the other foreign policy failure when it came to Afghanistan, in the sense that again, not to say we should have continued being in there for another 20 years, but it's how that whole withdrawal was done, and and you had a hand personally in evacuating people. People that actually deserve to be evacuated, and not just anybody who just happened to show up at the airport. So, I mean, how was seeing you had a little problem with the State Department, seemingly just wanting to take credit for efforts that you did on your own, or misrepresenting what they did on their end. I mean, how did that like affect you and seeing how much further degradation and faith?
I got to be honest, that it wasn't that it was shocking, and it wasn't to be expected. But in the time span that they did it was what was shocking. Within 4 hours, after 11 days, and 3 different attempts by the State Department and the Department of Defense to thwart our efforts to save a mother and her 3 children, Texas 13 natives in Congressman Ronnie Jackson's district. Then after we get by, within 4 hours of us getting the rescue, conducting the very first successful overland rescue, the State Department posts an actual thing in CNN that said, State Department saves 4 Americans. Just no shame whatsoever. Knowing that the botched withdrawal was absolutely 100% on the Biden administration with Secretary Blinken and Secretary Lloyd Austin, knowing it was about political optics and not ground truth. But I bring people to this realization. We may not like the reasoning why we were still in Afghanistan or why we were still in Iraq. I do not believe in nation building. I do not believe in the idea that we have to continue these endless wars. But let's face the facts. We have 30,500 troops which are still in Germany. We're still in Korea. We're still in Okinawa. So the idea that we're freaking out over 2,000 or 5,000 troops being in Afghanistan and Iraq when we're not worried about every other war we've ever been involved with, leaving tens of thousands of troops and putting billions of dollars into foreign economies, is puzzling to me. Because what President Trump did, Secretary Pompeo, they had a conditions-based agreement. If those conditions were not met, we held our adversaries accountable, because the reason for us going into Afghanistan was to stop it from being a safe haven of terrorism. All those lives that had been spilt, all of the money that we dumped in there is for nothing if we don't actually serve the purpose of why we went in there. And I tell people, and I remind people of this, especially all of us who served, it was the suits, not the boots, who failed us in Afghanistan. And that is continuing the problem. That's why I'm running for Congress now. Only 17% of our United States Congress is made up of military veterans. If we had more people who understood what it was to actually fight these wars, we'd have less people willing to actually vote for these wars.